So we have to be on our best behavior now. Especially you, Megan.
She just said, he's talking to us.
Well, should we start?
I think so, yeah. Well, I think so. Alexis and Natalia, you guys ready to go on a journey?
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Well, okay, so we are going to start by introducing ourselves to you. So I'm Mafe, and I'm from Colombia, and I moved to United States 3 years ago, and I arrived to Salinas. And when I arrived here, I started to pay attention to the river, not very closely, until last year that I met Felix, and together we started to observe and survey and monitoring the river, which flows by the town, very close to my place. And I have to say that it only took us like few hours to become big fans of this highly managed yet biologically important river. And during this field trip, we would like to show you a little bit of this place and share with you our reflections on the constant tensions to which it is exposed.
Yeah, and I'm Felix. I moved to California three and a half years ago. I came here to study landscape architecture, and I met Mafe about a year ago, and she lives in Salinas. I live about 2 hours north in Berkeley, near San Francisco, and we both really fell in love with the river, and we think it's a very forgotten river that not many people speak about, and so we really wanted to share it with with a wider audience. So before we start, I want to do a land acknowledgement, which both Mafe and I live in territory that traditionally belongs to the Ohlone people. The Salinas River that we're going to show you today, the parts that we're going to show you are on traditional Ohlone territory. And it's just a reminder that colonization is an ongoing process, and it still adversely affects indigenous people from the Bay Area. And we encourage you all to keep this in mind throughout the tour. Thank you so much all for coming to our talk. The video is about 30 minutes long, and we'll have 10 minutes for questions at the end. If you have any burning questions during the video, feel free to interject, say something. We don't want to have too rigid a format, so let's just be spontaneous, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So I'm going to share my screen to play the video.
So the Salinas River is about a few miles outside of Salinas, the town. And so we here we're biking from our home in Salinas towards the river. And during this field trip, so we're starting in the town of Salinas here, and we're biking out towards the river. During this trip, we're going to visit 4 sites. 3 of them are on the river, and 1 is on the hills above the river to get a bird's eye view over the riparian corridor. And we've chosen these sites to discuss the high tension between the surrounding agricultural landscape and the river as an ecological corridor. So here you can just see on the video just us biking through the town of Salinas, and that's me right there.
And the river is, like as Felix say, super close to the town, but is like largely hidden from view behind farmers' field or beneath ground entirely. So many people doesn't know really about this river. It's the longest river in the California Central Coast region. It is 170 miles or 280 kilometers long. And its valley is one of the most productive agricultural regions in the United States. And historically, the river was a dynamic and complex system with frequent flooding cycles and a broad range of habitat types. And currently, the river is densely surrounded by agricultural fields, disconnected from the floodplains, regulated by dams and levees, since the place where it is born until the mouth in the ocean, and restricted to a very narrow strip of riparian vegetation.
Yeah. So here on the video, we're leaving the town of Salinas and we're heading towards we're in the agricultural fields that are around it. And you're gonna see that even though the river flows very close to the town, there's really no connection there's no visible connection for most people between the river and the town. So this isn't a highly visible river. And because of this, most people don't know about it. It's also a river that has a lot of underground flow. So a lot of that flow is actually not visible. It's known as the upside down river because of how that flow is underground. So here you can see we're biking through like these huge fields. They are like monocultures, very intensively farmed, mainly strawberry, broccoli, lettuce, and what you're gonna see pretty soon, one of the issues with the river is that all the land around it is privately owned. So it makes it very difficult to actually see the river and access it. Here you can see, I think those are strawberries, Mafe, right? That we're seeing on the video.
Yeah,
So
strawberry fields.
Those are strawberry fields. And another thing to note is that this is happening during the end of the winter. So the river is, very different during other seasons. So just a couple of weeks ago, we saw that it was completely flooded. And during the summer, sometimes you don't see any water at all. You generally don't see any water at all.
And other thing about this riparian corridor is that it does not have any protected status. On the mountains next to the valley that you can see here in the background, there are like protected areas as Fort Ord National Monument. But the corridor, the riparian corridor, doesn't have any protected area. And when we think about this river, we like to make like a parallel between the river and the workers, because both have been historically neglected, invisibilized, and overexploited. And even when both of them support a big economy, it is estimated that Monterey County agriculture puts more than $8 billion per year into the local economy. And this could not be possible without the river and the workers, but there is not any investment in the river per se. So without the river, there will not be a salad bowl of the world, which is what the Salinas River Valley is nicknamed for all the lettuce that grows there. It's like around 70% of the lettuce of the United States is grown here in this valley.
So you can see these huge signs, posters, artwork that were made to represent the workers. So here we're trying to access the river on our bikes, and we come across this sign. You can see here. We weren't expecting this sign because we had gone there previously and it wasn't there, and it says no trespassing, private property, violators will be prosecuted. So what you're seeing, there's no social connectivity along the river. And the only part of the 170 miles of the river that is open to the public is a 2-mile stretch in the town of Paso Robles. And so here we're crossing a bridge that goes over the river. So you're going to see your first sight of the river here. And most people just drive over it and they don't notice anything, of course, because they don't even know that there's a river here. But there's actually a lot happening in the river, not just wildlife and water. When we went there a few months ago, you know, we met homeless people who are living there. There is an open air art gallery where people are spray painting underneath the highway on the concrete walls. We saw lots of species that we had never imagined would be there. We saw a species of crayfish. You can see here some of the vegetation that's growing. You know, it's beautiful, it's diverse. Yes, it's degraded. And unfortunately, the entire river is fenced off. So there's absolutely no way to access it except by trespassing, basically.
And we did that last fall because we did a cross section right under this bridge to record all the plant species that are like growing in this riparian corridor. And we inventory around 23 different species of vascular plants growing here. There are 2 plant species with like a critical endangered and with restricted habitat that are part of this riparian corridor. And also here, as you can see in the water, in, like, due to all these agricultural fields, there is like an overcharge of fertilizers and pesticides into the river. So there is like a constant process of eutrophication happening here.
Yeah. And here you can see the fence that's kind of blocking the river. Mafe, is the video slow for you? It's a little slow for me. Is it kind of playing?
It's not slow for me.
Okay.
It's jerky.
Yeah, it's a little jerky. I think that just might be the best we can do, though.
Connection?
I don't know. It could be a lot of different things. I think it's. I don't think there's anything we can do about it. I mean, I can try it on my computer.
You want to try? We can switch.
Yeah, we can try.
Okay, let's try.
All right, give me 2 seconds.
All the videos I've seen so far have been like this, so it's fine.
Yeah?
Kind of jerky, yeah.
Okay, I mean, let me just try this 1 second. And if it doesn't work, we'll go back to where we were.
Where you were, it looked like a visitor center to the river or something, where we just.
Well, we're gonna talk. Well, is this still jerky here?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. It is. So Mafe, let's just follow what you were doing. Let's just go back to what you were doing.
Okay. Okay.
Apologies, everybody.
So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah?
Yep, it's playing.
Okay, thank you. So here we are biking in Fort Ord National Monument, and we decide to go to this park to have like a like view of the riparian corridor. So as you can notice here, most of the trees are without leaves because it's the winter season, and most of them are populus and willows. And that is Salinas town in the background and all the agricultural fields.
You can really see how vast some of these fields are. And, you know, it goes without saying that all these fields are using, well, you know, most of these fields are using a lot of fertilizer and pesticides.
And all the water for the irrigation is from the river. So we also like to think about this river as a working river. And it's because it is mainly used to move the water from the Nacimiento and San Antonio reservoirs to all the towns and farms that are in the valley. And the riparian corridor is simply a leftover in the agricultural landscape.
Yeah. Right. Mafe, do you want to explain what working river means?
I think that the mean is that it has like, it's used just to move the water. So that's the meaning.
Yeah, yeah.
So all the water is kept in the reservoirs, and then the channel is used to irrigate all the agricultural fields along the river.
So right now we're moving to our second site along the river. This was a place that 2 months ago when we visited, the river actually overflowed over the road. And the road was closed because of that. So yeah, I'll let you watch this just for a little bit. Because the river has been forced into a certain channel because its range has been so restricted, it floods, you know, and it floods over the roads. So here we are at our second site along the river, and you can see that there's not much, like, there's only a little bit of new growth along the floor of the river, and that's because it flooded recently. So all this was covered with water. So here we are with our bikes parking. You know, there's nature everywhere here. So those are willows, and just starting to bud. You can see in the background, yeah, there's hummingbirds. You can see, you know, all these different colors. The red of the willows is really, really beautiful, especially at this season. And of course, during the summer, this is all super dense, or during the summer, during like later spring, you know, it's super dense vegetation. And so it's not as sparse as what it looks like now. So those are some of the willow flowers, right, Mafe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, some of the new seedlings growing in the earth there. And there's so much vegetation here, and we met a guy who lives there, and he lives in a tent by the river, and he's told us about the beavers, the foxes, the raccoons.
And this is the left bank of the river, and it is like annually flooded. So all the vegetation is in a early state of succession here, and the right bank of the river is like higher because it's like in a natural levee that the river formed. And And in that side, there are like more old growth vegetation. So we can see here that even if it's like highly degraded, it still has a high biodiversity. And it's basically because it's the only available habitat for many species. So we like to go like almost every week to wash the river and try to walk around and look for footprints on the ground. So we now know there are many mammals that live there, as golden beaver, gray foxes, a long-tailed weasel, opossums, raccoons, deers, bobcats, wood rats.
And no one talks about this, of course, or very few people talk about it because it's not a river that's studied very much. Mafe, you want to talk about the footprints here?
Yeah, here we saw, like during this field trip, we saw some raccoons footprints, and we also saw some deer's footprints during this day. But during like the monitoring that we did over the fall, we saw some bobcats footprints.
Yeah, and we really love looking at animal tracks because it's a way of communicating with animals, really, of seeing like who's there, and whilst like respecting their boundaries, and so we're like interacting with them but from a distance. And you know, these tracks, they remind us that other animals live outside of our, like, animals have their own lives, and we think it's super important to recognize that because it gets us out of like an anthropocentric lens. So here we're following a footpath along along the river. It's used by there's a homeless man who lives there, or who, he's not homeless, he has made a home there. And this is our, you know, more tracks, more animal tracks along the river. Mafe, are we on Bianco Road now?
Not yet. We're still in Davis Road.
Okay. Yeah, so you know, more evidence of different animals that are living here. There's also a lot of, you know, endangered and rare animals. There's bald eagles, green herons, blue herons, bobcats, steelhead trout, and a lot of endangered plant species like the Monterey spine flowers and the Monterey sand gillium. So here we're going to our final location. Our third location on the river.
Mm-hmm.
Mafe has mud on her backpack because she slipped and fell along the river. So what we're looking at right now is a huge berm to separate the fields from the river in order to protect the fields from flooding. And so here we're on private property again, and you're seeing a fence again. And Mafe, do you want to talk about the maintenance program here?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So as I said before, there is like not any like protected area along the riparian corridor, and there is not investment in restoration or reclamation or conservation of the riparian corridor in the Salinas city area. And there is just one program happening now in the river, that is the Salinas River stream program, and it's happening in the whole county. But like the main goal of this program is just to avoid flooding and protect the agricultural lands. So the quality of the ecosystem or the investment in restoration is just minimum. It's like the owners of the lands have to pay for these, and they basically do two things. One is open new channels in the river, removing vegetation with heavy machinery. And the second one is removing Arundo Donax areas with also heavy vegetation. So usually they just go with a bulldozer and open a new channel to avoid the flooding, and spray with pesticides. So is like, as I say before, is like privately funded, so it's very difficult to ask for more things. But this open like all the view to the huge potential that has this river to invest in restoration, reclamation, and conservation projects, and have like more access to people, and also all the species that have this corridor as a habitat.
So this is our third site on the river, and we're going to go underneath this bridge and see what's happening.
Are you essentially traveling downstream or upstream?
Downstream.
Yeah. And while we're at it, we should mention that today the river doesn't even make it to the ocean. It ends up in a lagoon, and the lagoon is closed. So that gives you an idea of how disturbed the environment is.
Toxic.
So here we are underneath the highway, and it's amazing because the second you go underneath the highway, suddenly it's like you're in a different world. And you think about the fact that every day, people are driving over this without even really paying attention to all that's there. And so kind of one of the key points of this talk that we want to share with you guys today and hear your feedback on is that even though this is a hugely like degraded environment, it's also one of the only wildlife and corridors in the Salinas Valley. And it's really a place with a great plant biodiversity. And so even if it's degraded, we should really be doing our best to steward it and protect it. Mafe?
I have an alarm sounding, sorry about that. Yeah, this is like I think that one of our favorite places to visit around Salinas is like this spot under this bridge. And in this area, so we saw some like footprints that we think belong to a bobcat. So we are just trying to follow them, and we also always take like some photos and then send them to biologist friends to try to identify them. And as Felix was saying before, this is like this river, this riparian corridor represents like a huge opportunity to have like a place to enhance the quality of the habitat and also like reinforce the connection between like cities and nature, because now it's completely disconnected even if it's so close to the town. So we are very like excited about this river. We really became big fans of this river, and we would like to continue like monitoring this place and also try to perhaps like walk or biking or use a boat to go from the place where the river starts in San Luis Obispo and then go along the river all like along its way until the Monterey Bay area next to Moss Landing, where it ends. But now is not reaching the ocean, as Felix was saying, because there is another dam there, and the water is kept to feed the channels that irrigate all the agricultural fields. And the mouth is just open when there is like overflowing, like when there are like rainy seasons and there are like flooding issues impacting the highway or the towns next to the river. So in that moment, the maintenance programs and like some bulldozers to open the channel in the beach to connect the river to the ocean and have like the drainage happening there. So the last part of the video, we decided to include some interviews from people in Salinas about the river. So I'm going to increase the volume. What do you know about the Salinas River?
I don't know a whole lot, but I guess it gets all the irrigation from
Louder.
ponds and brings it out to the ocean. Just a run.
Have you been in the river?
I've been in it and I've floated down it. I used to motorcycle down there. I just crossed the river. It's shallow. Yeah, I've heard there was sinking sand back there, but I never ran into it. There were other bikers down there that kind of got me into it, and never had any issues. So.
Okay. Do you know about the Salinas? Do you know of the Salinas River?
I've heard about it.
What do you know about it?
I know that it starts in Soledad or somewhere like down the valley, and it leads into the ocean around like Moss Landing area.
Right. What's your relationship with the river?
Relationship with the river.
Have you been there?
Question.
Okay. What do you know about the Salinas River?
I do. Yeah, I know. I've lived near it most of my life.
Yeah. Like, what do you know about it?
I know the first thing they tell you about it is that it's the world's largest underground river. Because that's why you never see any water in the river. It's this aquifer, and there's a flow going all the time. So, yeah. No, yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. And I don't know if it's true that it is the largest or whatever, but it's, yeah, it's mostly underground.
Huh. What is your relationship with the river,
Well, I mean, like,
if any?
well, I grew up down the road in King City, 50 miles south, and we just used to play down at the river. And when we're teenagers, we'd go down there and like drop acid and spend all day and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just do stuff down to you're down at the river.
Yeah.
But as far as what I know, I mean, there's dams upriver that, it affects how much water is flowing in the Salinas. That's why some of it just doesn't make it to the ocean, and they have saltwater intrusion
Yeah.
problem because there's nothing pushing saltwater away.
So that's the field trip.
Huh.
I saw some questions on the chat, so maybe we can try to go over those questions and respond them.
Yeah, or does anyone want to ask a question on like directly on by video or by with sound?
I'm very interested.
For sure, any thoughts?
I'm the one who put all the questions in the chat. My name is Vern Kelly. I'm a landscape architect and an environmental planner in the Chesapeake Bay area in Maryland, United States. I am a wetland delineator and a forest stand delineator as part of my work. And I do restorations of streams and shorelines as part of my work. So my questions are, one, is this river wholly within California's boundaries? Or is it interstate? Do you know?
It's all in California.
Okay. Does California have a set of jurisdictional programs for rivers such as this?
I didn't find anything. I did like a project last semester in just about this river and looking for some like protection ways or like status to preserve the river. I didn't find anything different to the Salinas River Stream Maintenance Program. It's the only thing that is happening in the river. And I think that is basically because most of the river is privately owned.
Right, and they're sold the water rights, so the people who own the land over the river have the water rights to the water below.
Yeah.
What you have is an overflow flood corridor, which is unmanaged and unmitigated. The only management is to the dikes that you were referring to, and the carving outs. So you definitely have a lot of pollutants. Obviously, you've been mentioning them, and the very degraded water quality. That basically that's sort of the cesspool of the river, and yet it's a brilliant wildlife corridor. It's still, nature is still surviving and showing how it can survive, but the water quality is probably poisoned. And the idea of trying to let it go into the sea may not be the best idea until you get it cleaned up, right? Because there's maybe a reason that lagoon is there at the end is because it's to gather all the toxins and prevent it from going into the ocean. I would say it's not a blessing for that to get to the sea, but I would think that, you have the great intentions and the very, very right idea that you have to document and relate to the community. You're doing exactly the right things to get started, and bring attention to the Sierra Club, the big organizations and people who can help you. They're great organizations, Audubon, John Muir. There's a lot of connect out there, but that's a grandiose task, and I admire the film and your resolve to do something about it. You need champions, you need river keepers. That's what we have on our Potomac and our rivers. The Potomac was completely polluted in the 60s when I grew up. They still don't want you to fish in the Anacostia, but we have the Anacostia Watershed Society now. A guy named Boone showed up from North Carolina, and he was a carpenter, and he came to my house and he said, I came here with a vision. I said, what was your vision? He said, I was sent here to clean up the Anacostia River. I'm thinking, this is a crazy man from North Carolina, and he shows up in my house to be a carpenter, as a carpenter. There's too much going on there. And lo and behold, he did it. He did it. He created a society that adopted the river, and then he started getting funding. And now they have all these programs for children and growing oysters to clean the river and freshwater oysters. So it's amazing. It just takes a couple of winners like you guys to go at it. So congratulations, bringing it to our attention.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other thoughts from anyone here?
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Megan from California, and I would like to know from each of you, what was the most interesting or most surprising thing that you found on your exploration?
Well, for me, everything was excited because, like every time that I was crossing the bridge on Highway 68 over the river, I was thinking like, wow, this is like a dead river because like it looks like so polluted, and like the narrow corridor is like just like a little bit of a space. And then the first time that we went to visit the river, I was amazed by all the animals and people and art and plants and all the like activities happening there. So we had like in our first visit, we had an encounter with a very like brave crayfish that was decided to just push us away of the river. And for me, that was unbelievable. Even if it's an invasive species in the Salinas River, I was very amazed by the determination of this little animal to just defend the river.
Yeah, for me too. The crayfish was the most amazing, and I was interested in the river, but the most amazing thing for me was really seeing Mafe's fascination with it, and it was like contagious for me because thanks to Mafe, I really started looking at all the different plants that were there, and so for me the greatest thing it was really amazing just to see how much joy it brought first in Mafe and then in me.
Very nice.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments?
I am putting my contact information in the chat so that if you need an advocate down in Washington, D.C., someone to go lobby for you, meet with your state representatives and senators, I'm happy to help.
Thank you so much.
Final question. So what are your next steps in continuing to be friends of this river and advocates for this river?
Well, first, I really want to go every week to just take notes about the river. I'm still doing that since last semester after the first like monitoring that we did. So I'm all the time taking pictures and recording all the things that I saw in the river. I'm also trying to collect all the geographical information system data about the river to try to like know where is available and what we could do. We are also all the time interviewing people. Every time that we are along the river, like I think that 3 weeks ago that we went to visit the lagoon next to the ocean, we saw some people from the water resources management of the county, and they were monitoring the river, and they were like supervising the channel that they were opening to connect the lagoon with the ocean to avoid the flooding in the highway, even if it's more polluted, because it's like all the water from the towns and the highway and the agricultural fields and the pesticides inside the river. So I think that that's where we are, and we are also trying to just ask more questions to all the people in town about the river, like to have a better sense about the perception of the river and how we can make like this conspiracy that we want to make to protect the river.
Yeah, and I think there's also a lot of networking that we can do. We're realizing that there have been a few people who have also been interested in the Salinas River. There's been this one woman who has walked the entire stretch. And so we're interested in networking really, and trying to finding allies and building a little bit of a social movement really. So maybe there could be a little social media platform as well. I think if we can start getting attention on it, we can start having more discussions.
You could blog about it, right? Have a blog and post stuff that way. That's one method that people do around here, I know.
Yeah. My dream would be to get to negotiate with the farmers to give up a little bit of land to create a park along the river.
So I did a project like that, but it was business people that were polluting a river, and I devised a way to do the carrot and the stick. And the part of it is exactly to engage with them and ask them, if you were offered a benefit, would you do it? Would you give up some of your land? And then you have to describe the benefit. And you also then have in your deck of cards that there are possibly violations that you don't address with the farmers, but overall violations of pollution. And you then give the government the job of mandating in 5 years, you can come into voluntary compliance, or we'll do an enforcement effort. And it may be a straw threat, but it's the methodology that worked for me, is to give them an incentive because they'll gain something from it. And I use the government to say, hey, they're polluting. They should be cited for the pollution, but let's give them 5 years a chance to create riparian buffer zones. We had a problem with chicken shit going into the Chesapeake Bay, and it creates hysteria. So what the farmers were offered around here was to regrade their property and make ponds so that all of the runoff went into the ponds and not into the bay. So you could do something similarly, that if the state came along and helped you to make the ag service, the extension service, cooperative extension service, were to come out and make retention ponds for you to have your runoff go into the ponds, which are clay lined so the pollutants don't percolate, and then they're managed, they're mucked out periodically with a suction truck or whatever, and stop that runoff from fields going back into the river. Yeah. So it's a broad approach, but it is an approach. So that's what I do.
Very interesting.
Well, thank you both for answering my question and taking us on this lovely tour of a beautiful place.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Right.
Raised hand there.
Uh-huh.
Hi.
Ah, yeah.
Right. You hearing me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm from Mexico. I'm in Baja California. I'm not so far away from the other California. I didn't know about this river in the area. As in South California, all the rivers, there's no water in them. No? But a river that big is incredible, no? And with the water all along, it's incredible also. And the agriculture, it's also very impressive. All these, I don't know what, my question was how many miles of canals are there compared to how many miles of river, of natural river? Maybe you can ask this. But the interesting thing also, I can share an example in Mexico, because in the Salinas River at the end, there's no more water. Okay, in the next to Monterrey, there's no more. It's dry. Okay, because of the a dam. And in the everybody knows the Colorado River, no, one of the largest. What happened in Mexico is the same in the Alto Golfo de Mexico, in the delta of the Rio Colorado. It's one of the biggest rivers in the world, and there's no water anymore coming to Mexico, no? So it's the same thing in a different scale, no, and in a upside down direction. So, but there's an interesting example. It's one NGO, an organization, non-profit organization, Pro Natura. He after very many years, like the Bine, I think the first people who was participating, many years of efforts, he managed to get some to negotiate at a national level or international level a little water from the United States. And so now this space, which is desert, there's no water, the community has some water flowing, and this NGO has made a reforesting, planting trees, natural species, and working with the community on this thing, putting trees, monitoring birds, as an indicator, and there's some ducks coming back, and there's some ducks nesting. And so all this with the community, planting with the community, with the child, everything. So it's very interesting because he's created a space, a new space. So where they had to choose the space because the delta is very big. It's maybe 100 miles, 200 kilometers more or less. It's also a very big place, in the middle of the desert. So maybe it's a very interesting experience. Maybe you should with Pro Natura did this experience with others, and we have I work in the university here in Ensenada, in the UABC, the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California. Now we work a lot of environment and these sort of themes. But it's a very interesting experience. And I think maybe it's the Salinas River, maybe it's so long, maybe you should identify a spot with, you talk about bicycles, if you take the bicycle, there may be bike associations, or maybe in one city, in one part of the river and not in the other part. So maybe in this part you could do some activities. Or there's a lot to do. It's incredible, your work, and I don't know, it made me think of this story in the delta of the Alto Rio Colorado, negotiating water from another stakeholder, and for a cause of reforesting and community building around some river. Because it's very interesting, the video, although we didn't hear that much, but all the people have a story about this river. So it's really nice. So the guy coming back he will be happy to come back to the place 40 years ago he used to play as a child, or stuff like this. So the agriculture might give some land, but maybe it could give some water, and quality water maybe. It's a good. a lot of work to do, but it's really worth it because you see this example of success, and it's incredible.
Yeah,
Thank you. I know.
Thank you for sharing that reference. Yeah, I agree with you that there is a huge potential to like do environmental planning and advocate for this river and have like a strong connection, community river. So yeah, that is like, I think that's our dream.
Yeah.
Tag, you're it.
And about the length of the canals, the artificial canals compared to the length of the river. The river is more or less 200 kilometers or something like this.
Yeah, the river is
And the canals?
280 kilometers. I don't know exactly what is the length of all the channels because
Is it
also,
like the double or because speaking of conservation or water environment, because if there's so many miles of water, as in there, there's life, no? So it's
yeah, I mean, all the irrigation for the agricultural fields is taken from the river. It's just that because the river is mostly a groundwater river, so they just have like the pumps taking the groundwater to use like in the irrigation systems. There are channels, there are many artificial channels. I don't know exactly the length of all the channels.
Upstream, does it spring from a sole source, or is it fed by multiple channels, multiple tributaries?
The river?
Yeah, the sources.
There are mainly one tributary, that is the Arroyo Seco tributary, and the biggest one. And it's like an amazing place because it has like a very high quality ecosystem associated to that part. Arroyo Seco. And that is the only tributary that the river has. It has many creeks, but the main tributary is Arroyo Seco.
And does that spring from the mountain?
Yeah, yeah. It's in the back of Big Sur, the spring of the
area? That's a start.
That is the start of Arroyo Seco. And the beginning of the river is in Los Padres National Forest in San Luis Obispo.
Well, that's good. The mouth is protected.
Yeah, yeah, both mountains are protected. Yeah, that's good. And Arroyo Seco is just unbelievable. We went to visit that place, and it's like there is no way to compare Arroyo Seco, like the upstream tributary, with the Salinas River in Salinas town. It's completely different.
My wife works for the U.S. Forest Service. She's in the international programs section, but the national forests are one of our most important assets, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Late.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us. The Colorado project.
We're not leaving. We want more. You'll have to kick us out. Show us more. Thank you.
Your turn, Mafe.
I want to see some behind the scenes river.
We have a lot of material to share with you.
Did you film on your DSLR camera?
Yeah. Yeah, I use my, it's a shame that it was laggy.
It was very laggy.
Yeah, but I went to some talks yesterday and they were all like that.
I think it's hard to host a video on Zoom. I just don't think it has very good playback capabilities.
Yeah.
I
Is it, what time does it finish this talk? Is it at the
it never finishes.
never finishes?
Yeah.
It never ends.
We're staying.
But the
we're
video,
staying.
yeah, it was like I didn't understand the word jerky, but when I saw the video, yeah, I understood that. It was like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, same me. It's a new word in my vocabulary. Like, what is that?
yeah. Because my teacher, a colleague of mine is presenting on Thursday. I don't know if he has a video, but I'll have to tell him not to put a video. Okay. Someone said they were all like this, no?
Yeah, someone said they're all like this.
They were like,
Yeah.
but- and in this La Salinas River, it's very long. It's incredible. Isn't there one of the places where they have like this sort of thing you want to do, or maybe in one place there's a conservation area zoning, in another place there's a say a biking place, another place a fishing place, and maybe should.
There's only 2 miles along the entire river that are accessible to the public. Correct, right, Mafe?
Yeah.
And it's
2 miles out of 2,000 to 200 or something like that.
Yeah, and it's in the city of
Paso Robles.
Paso Robles.
Yeah. Now it's just that tiny area that is open to the public, but I think that it's possible to propose like a new planning for the riparian corridor and has like more access to the public and include like all these like biking paths and conservation, restoration, and improvement of the ecosystem. It's just that it's necessary to make like a lot of work and organize all the information and present like all the like narrative in a very clear way, because there is a huge potential. There are like many things.
It's not a federal. Sorry, it's not in Mexico. The rivers are. It's a federal. It's not private. How you say land? No, it's the land tenure. No sé, tenencia de la tierra. It's federal. The rivers. There's like the sea. There's like a few meters around the river. It's federal, so it's not private. Even if it's in the middle of a private thing, if it's a lake or river, it's federal.
We thought that, but I think that because it's like it has such an important like economic value, there is not federal like rights on the land, not even state rights on the land. It's all private, and it's just like, okay, you are like the agricultural field is producing such a big amount of money that they have the right to own the land and all the water and all the river. So that's why it has to be, yeah, that was it has to be like all that planning and all that potential, it has to be like linked with a big social movement and like a recognition of the community that is living along the river, of the importance of the river.
Yeah, I remember now that you said this. One of the things that they managed to get, or logros of the example I said, is that in the when you have the water resource, the water, it can be industrial or residential or for some different users. And what they manage, one of the things they managed to do is to now there is one user is conservation. So so I think that in the contract or the agreement they managed to obtain, there's a certain percentage or volume of the water coming upstream that is for conservation use. That I forgot. That's one of the things that they manage, and it's very important because it's always like this. It's secure. No? They make sure that there's always some water for conservation. Maybe in your dry basin at the next to the sea, there can be. See, you understand me? No, that was one of the things they managed to negotiate for the conservation and get some water down the delta, and then reforest and all the things that goes along with the community and everything. And that's the point, the important point of the speech they gave us.
I think that the issue with this river is, and that's why we called this river like a working river, is that there is not interest about to protect the water, because the only like use is just to circulate the water to irrigate the fields, and that's all. So it's just like to keep the reservoirs, San Antonio and Nacimiento, and then move all the water to irrigate all the rivers. All the agricultural fields.
But it's the same in the delta, in the Colorado River. It's a desert, but it's loads of agriculture. It's like on the other side of the border, also in Calexico, there's a lot of agriculture in all this valley. It's the same valley. The water is underground. It's not in the river. It's underground. So there's a lot of agriculture. It's the same problem. But they managed to get some water for conservation. It was the same problem. The agriculture lobby also it's incredible, and Mexico is worse.
Yeah,
very strong. So maybe this can accelerate something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a conversation that needs to happen, like to negotiate like all these with the like agricultural like industry, and see like, okay, there is like a huge income from all these crops, so something should be invested in the river to protect the water and protect the ecosystem and keep the like wildlife associated to the riparian corridor.
I think that's a really interesting point, Mafe, because working at the Resource Conservation District, which someone in the chat mentioned something similar that they have in Canada, I guess, but we've been doing side channel restoration and reconstruction projects off of the Sacramento River. And in one creek, that's a big salmon run. And it's very interesting people's perspectives and the water rights that are existing that are so hard to get around. And all of the incentives that these farmers have are purely economic. And in order to talk to them, you kind of have to talk to them on that level, which is quite depressing, but also kind of the unfortunate reality of the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to become very good economists and like translate all the value of the ecosystem in a like monetary scale, so we can negotiate with these huge like companies.
Yeah, and maybe find like the one or two large farmers who are willing to help. You know, there may not be many, but there may be one or two, and they could be kind of allies in the process. I know there's always some farmers who are interested in you know, kind of doing something.
Yeah, but I think that it has to be a pressure, you know, like a pressure from someone, like from the community or from someone that is interested in like conserve or invest something in conservation. If not, of course, there are farmers willing to do something, but it's going to be the minimum. And that is the thing that is happening with the maintenance program. So they are just like investing as little as they can to protect the river, but behind that protection, they are really protecting their self, because they are just opening the channel to avoid the flooding and avoid economic losses. So it's like a very like intricate system of give and take.
Hmm.
Well, I have a meeting in 3 minutes. So I have to
A
leave.
lot of time.
Very nice, this conversation. Very nice to meet you. Say, how do you say your last name? Say, Sanger?
Stranger. I don't know why that doesn't appear to me, but my name is George Jorge.
It
No,
would
no,
be
why?
very
I
nice if
changed it.
we exchange emails so we can continue talking about the experiences in Mexico and the experiences here. I think that it will be very nice.
Yeah, we're very close. All the border is the same issues, no? Related. The River Colorado on both sides.
Yeah, so if you can share with us your email, it will be fantastic.
Yeah,
to
sure.
keep in touch.
I'm in the UABC University. We have a lot of PhD, MSc in environmental everything. A lot of interdisciplinary people. We have economists who study the price of the water, the value of the water, and all of this stuff. We have a lot of the talks that I was hearing, today, they're quite related to a lot of the themes, very different themes.
Hmm.
So maybe we'll see each other in the different talks.
Yeah, maybe. Are you giving any talk?
No, I'm not giving any talks. Some people working with me are giving talks about urbanization in the valley, the wine valley in the Ensenada. There's a wine valley, El Valle de Guadalupe, where there is a lot of wine, and a lot of people coming to live in this wine valley, and and taking all the vegetation away. So it's changing a lot of land use change, and water problem. And all that comes with it. So we have a lot of studies over there.
Super. Yeah, here there is like another like watershed close to Salinas River that is the Carmel River, and that is surrounded by wine, like vineyards, fields.
Vineyards, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the same problem in Mexico. There's a lot of they take all the vegetation and they put a house and the neighbor. So it's not rural, the rural area, all the wine landscape. That one goes there to live, or to have a second house, not to live. So it's changing, So now there's no water. All the classic problems.
Yeah, a lot of changes.
There's a talk on Friday. It's at 7 o'clock in the morning. So 7 plus 3 is 10, 15 in the morning. The EST time or whatever time that they're using. I don't know what's it. For California, it's 7 in the morning, and I think all of you in California, no? It's
we are all in California.
Okay, can it Bruce Joseph also in California, right? Bruce Joseph, or who's it?
Sorry, muted. Yes. Megan and I live in Northern California in Redding, so the Sacramento Valley. So we have the Sacramento River, which is another one of the most productive agricultural rivers in the state. Yeah. Also channelized, but much, much larger.
We have a river here in Ensenada. I live in Ensenada, but there's no water in the river. 1 hour, if it rains, maybe you have 1 hour of water, and then it goes away. So all the traffic stops, and then more or less like in South California, I guess. No?
Yeah.
Well, Mafe, we should let you go.
Yeah, I don't know if I end the meeting. I don't know what is
This is the last meeting. It's the last session of the day.
I think so. Yeah. I think that now all the people should be in the garden party.
There's a garden party with drinks and everything, and we keep talking. Let's go to the garden party then. There's a garden party with music and drinks and whatever.
Yeah.
Is it by Zoom party? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a Zoom party.
I don't know. All right, let's see what's the Zoom party about. That's quite new for me. Okay, see you later.
Very nice to meet you. Bye.